one of the things that need to be considered in laying out your pattern pieces on your fabric is the pattern markings. Now, just in case you're unaware of what these mean, they have them identified on your pattern instruction sheets. So what they basically are saying is that you're looking at the grain line, the fold line, buttonhole markings. Button markings it gives symbols for each one of these markings. So that's something that you want to look at on your pattern, your tissue, as you're laying out your pattern pieces. And we can go over those, but we primarily are utilizing, number one, the grain line, which is telling you that you want to place the line on the straight of the grain parallel to the selvage of the fold, which I showed you earlier. The fold line, it shows you exactly how that's identified. That's right here, fold line. Then it shows you buttonhole markings. It shows you a button marking and other different notches and symbols. So you might see a little small triangle, a double triangle, a small circle, a large circle, and then you may see, and these, well, I call them triangles, inverted triangles, if we go back and look at the notches. And then a little small square or a triangle. And each one of those mean something. They're the pattern markers that tell you how to put things together. Okay, so it's very important that you review that as well. And you'll see that on your tissue, your pattern tissue. And it's definitely saying here that the seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch unless it's otherwise noted. And that's not normally printed on the tissue, the pattern tissue, because it's kind of the norm, unless they say specifically only stitch 1/4 of an inch or stitch a full inch or something to that effect. Is saying that it's something different than the norm, which is the 5/8 of an inch stitching that you have. So we'll look at that also a little in a little more depth as well. So because each pattern company or each pattern will have something different on it sometimes. So they're showing how they mark them differently. So just always kind of go to your guide sheet, your instructions, and see what they may have identified here for you, okay? Okay, a couple of things on this particular pattern as I did the layout. I wanted to point out that even though it said 7 pieces here, 1 through 7, that a couple of those pieces required that you cut those out twice. They actually identified it as the lining. So it would be, well, 3 pieces. The number 1, which is the bodice front, number 2, the back, and then a third piece, which is number 5, the pocket. So they're actually saying, hey, you can actually use lining for that if you choose. Now, I had enough fabric where I'm just utilizing my same outer fabric as the lining, so I'm going to self line it, right? So because I'm not going to do anything else with the fabric unless I'm giving it to someone who quilts, but I went ahead and I cut out my additional pieces. I cut out an additional piece for the pocket, so you're laying that out twice because it says cut 2 of the fabric and cut 2 of the lining, so that would be 4 pieces total. All right, on the front top bodice, it's saying cut 1 of the fabric and cut 1 of the lining. Even though I have mine flipped over on the side, it says on the fold you're cutting out 1 of the lining and 1 of the fabric. So I've cut that out twice. All right, so I've got 2 pieces, 2 layers. All right, additionally, now one of the things that I'm using also is an interfacing, just to add a little bit more body to the top. And because I'm self-lining it, I am going to utilize the interfacing on the lining piece so that the print doesn't show through on the outer fabric. So it'll be another layer in between. If you want to do that, that's perfectly fine, but you don't have to. I'm just doing it simply because of this fabric that I have, and I see how the colors can kind of show through because it's a relatively thin piece of fabric. All right, so I've cut out, so what you see here is I've cut out one outer body, one for the lining, and then one interfacing. Okay, optional. All right, then I did the exact same thing for the back. All right, the back I've done, it says cut two, it says cut two of the lining, cut two of the fabric, because it's not on a fold and it's on a cutting line, so you're going to have pretty much the same thing. I've got, that's the outer fabric, 1, 2, then that's the lining, 1, 2, and then I've got the interfacing, 1, 2, which can be considered to be an inner line. I'm calling it an inner lining, but it's just another layer of fabric in between. Now, let's talk a little bit about the markings on this particular pattern. We've got markings for dart in the back. We've got double notches for connecting the sides. We've got a double notch here, which pretty much identifies that this is the back and I'm connecting it to something else. All right, then we've got a couple of little triangles here. Okay, we want to mark those and identify those because we don't want to have to bring out our tissue paper again, our pattern tissue again. All right, same thing on the front. Okay, we've got a large dart here marking, if you can see that. That's going to be a dart that we'll mark, and then another dart here. And then we've got some notches around the entire piece because this piece will be connected to the back. Same thing for the pocket. All right, we've got a couple of notches that we're going to cut through, and then on the front, skirt front, we've got some places, a circle, large circles, where you can actually see with the placement. This is going to be the placement of the pocket, and we've got some notches around the top. I don't like shifting it so much, but I just want to be sure I point those out. Now, normally what I do with back up on the front as well, there's a place for the pleat. All right, it says that this is the center front. All right, from here all the way down, it shows the center front. So I'm going to mark that. I'm just going to take my tissue paper, and since it's a straight line, you don't have to, but I'll take a rule and place it on top and use my tracing wheel, and I will mark that. Okay, so now I want to show you how I do my little quick marks. Okay, wherever I see a notch, let's say on this one there's a single notch right here. Okay, this is the front, skirt front, a single notch. I will take I've got some little scissors, but they're gingers, primarily for cutting fabric, but they're just a little shorter, 5-inch I think, gingers. And I take my scissors and I will just do a little clip right into the notch. Okay, now it's not very much, if you can see. That way I'll know that that's going to be attached to another piece, and I'm just marking it as I go along. So it's one, and I just kind of follow the flow. I go all the way down. I don't see anything else. Okay, all right. Now here, where is the center front, there's a circle there showing me where I'm actually going to stitch this and then baste down the rest. But I can take this and I can clip it to identify that that's a line where I'm going to baste it, or I can do as I showed you previously, where I'm going to take my tissue paper and I'm going to mark it. But before I do that, what I do is I continue around the piece of the garment, all right, and I find another notch. Okay, there are 2 single notches here, so I'm actually just going to clip that as well. See, clip, clip. All right, and then I go around the rest of the pattern. There's a notch here, so I'm going to clip where the notches are. Okay, if there's a double notch, I will actually make 2 clips. so I know it's a double notch. Let's take this piece. There's got to be a piece. Yeah, here's the back. It requires, it says 2 notches, right? So all I'm going to do is clip 1, and I'm going through all layers because remember I have this. The good thing about gingers is they're very sharp. I'm sure someone else has a favorite of different shears, but this has gone through how many layers of fabric. So see, I've got my interfacing. You can see the clip here. See, two little small clips. Then I've got my lining. You can see the clips there. Where are they? Okay, there are 2 clips there. They're small, but you can see them. And then I've got the outer fabric, and there are 2 clips there. Okay, so it goes through all layers of fabric, which is great. I don't have to like lift it up and clip each one. And then I'm going, so all around notches, I do a little clip on the fabric. All right, circles, I will make markings for those with my tracing wheel and tracing paper. So I'm going to grab my tracing paper, grab my tracing wheel. I use a solid one, solid wheel right here. That's what I use. And some people use the one with the little serrated edge. It just depends. This kind of keeps down the tearing of my pattern tissue. It doesn't tear it as much. But it also depends on whether the type of fabric you have. So sometimes, let's say later on you want to use this as a sundress. I'm not sure if you want to make it out of something heavier, right? But if there was an item you're using and it's a thick piece of fabric like a corduroy, and sometimes you really can't penetrate the fabric like you can on with this. So I use the serrated one. Okay, so I'm going to grab my tissue paper and I'm going to show you how I mark the darts and any little small circles. There's a small circle there, and the little triangle pieces so I know that there's a stopping point somewhere. The instructions in the guide sheet will show me later as I'm sewing, just to go over this. Let's see. Let's find where the little triangles are. All right. See right here on one, we're down by the lining and the finishing. It's saying to pin the bodice, stitch neck edges pivoting at the small circles, stitched armhole edges below small circles as shown, clip to small circles, trim under stitch lining as far as possible. And then they also have some triangles there to show you that those are some stopping points right there. Okay, even though they're not saying it in the words, the picture kind of tells you that that's one of those markers or stops right there. And as you can see, I'm back up. See right there. This would be, actually we will be attaching this to the strap, the back. So it's going to basically identify that. So let me see if I can find it, so you'll see what I'm talking about. See, as we attach it, it doesn't show the markers at all anymore now that we've turned it over. A different kind of pattern. So I can see why sometimes people are a little challenged with it, because the markings, the words, the description or the instructions in words does not show exactly what the picture is doing. Okay, so but that's why we're taking the class. Okay, what I have here, there are different types of marking tracing paper. Okay, I have the one that's called disappearing mark be gone tracing paper, because it disappears after a while, and I don't have to be concerned that those markings will show through on my fabric. Okay, see, disappearing mark be gone, and it's by Dritz. All right, so it came in a full sheet. See, this was a whole sheet, and I just cut it in half. I cut it in half, and now I'm going to use it on my marking my pattern. Okay, the thing about this is this works really great with one sheet because it's colored on both sides, and it works great when you have when you've cut out your fabric with the wrong sides together. So you can, all you have to do is just kind of put this in between your fabric and mark it. In my case, what I've done and what I like to do is I like to cut my fabric out with the right sides together, and therefore the wrong side is going to be like this. So I'm just going to slip this through. Now, the great part about this is that it actually comes with a little plastic fabric as well, where actually all I'm going to do is put it in between my pattern tissue and the marking, so it doesn't get on, I don't use it, it doesn't get on the tissue. Okay. There are different types of tissue paper. Sorry. There are different types of tracing paper. So sometimes they're wax, and this particular purple one is great for hard to mark fabric, like this white is great because it disappears. But the problem is that whatever residue they have on this is kind of coming through or coming off, so you can see it on my fingers. So it's really time for me to get some more because it's kind of basically leaking is what I'm calling it. So all I'm going to do, and this is just to kind of give, just for demo purposes, I'm going to, depending on with this multi-size pattern, the dart size is identifying it right here. The size is 20, 22, 24, and here's 16 and 18. Okay, so I normally take my tracing wheel and I would just follow the line up. Okay, and then with a circle where the end of the dart stops, I take my tracing wheel and I go across. So that lets me know I'm stopping. Then I'll come back, and where the circle at the bottom is, I'll put one little line across, then another one line there, and then I'll finish. Actually, I did the wrong one. Sorry. It would be this one. Okay, then I'd finish marking it there. And then once I finish it, you'll see that same marking transferred to my fabric. So that's what I'm going to do throughout the rest of the pieces that I have. And I have to mark, I'm just actually going to mark the lining, the interfacing, I'm sorry, and not my lining on this particular one, because I'm going to transfer, I'm actually going to stitch this around on my, the interfacing on my fabric, so I don't need to mark the lining piece as well as the interfacing. I just need to mark one, okay? Hopefully, I'm like, that's a mouthful, but hopefully you got it. So I'm going to stop, because I'm sure you don't want to see me mark up the tissue paper, mark up the pieces. I mean, wherever there's some critical markings, I would do that. Mark darts. Different people like to mark in different ways. It's quite okay if you've learned to do tacking. You can do tacking, needle and thread, tack it, open it up, cut it through. You may even have some other tools where you can do a little punch hole where, and then it has a little marking on it. I've used several different types, so it's totally up to you. Whatever works for you to get it marked, so you're not having to pull out your tissue paper again when you are ready to sew. Because once you start, you rocking and rolling, I know, old-fashioned, and you don't want to pull out that tissue paper again. It kind of slows you down. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'll come back when I have finished marking my pattern pieces, and we'll get started with sewing. Yay!